We have neither gotten any request to shut down our network or do any kind of censorship. Never. We have now, in 2016, implemented what we call a live intercept system. So we have a system that is capable of doing live intercept and is prepared for when the authorities are able and will be able to present the regulations that will be controlling this. But so far, no request has come on this. Question might be, do we expect more or less of authority requests? I expect more. That's why we put so much effort into making sure that we have good procedures, that we have people working on this, we have the right system in place. We see, and that's why we push a lot also, that we would like the legislations, especially around what we then say the cybercrime and the electronic evidence bill, to be conducted. There is a draft in place, but it's still not, and it's been a slow-moving process to get this through the government and get it concluded. So we are still, and we will still be pushing for this to be concluded, because that's the lacking part of having a good and solid understanding, which is aligned with all parties on how this should be treated going forward. But in the meantime, we will operate with the process and the alignment which we have done so far, which then secures at least we have a court order that is then implemented as part of the request. Fourth area, institutional landscape. It's been an amazing journey we've been on in an extremely compact time. And we have had good support from government throughout this process. And we feel very confident, both with the old government and the new government, that we have the stakeholders that we can go to, discuss to, when we have issues in our industry, or specifically then for Telenor. I think our appeal and observation is that still it is a lack of institutional capacity. It's just the sheer number of having the capacity to deal with the more over complex issues that arise in the telecom industry as the industry is growing so fast. In the beginning, it was easier in the sense that it was all about just the rollout, how to support it, how to get the progress needed in the rollout. Now it's much more difficult and complex issues being raised. So our encouragement still goes out to the government that we would like to see that we're able to see a plan of how we're going to see more capacity being brought into the institution. We also would like to see that we are seeing more intra-agency cooperation between the ministries, because some of the assets that we either are using as supporting the telecom industry are assets or things that needs approval cross agency. And today that's a difficult journey to actually see good progress on. So we encourage that to be happening more, and then in that light, we have been advocate from very beginning that we think that it's a benefit for the country and the industry that we play in, that we're able to share. Share infrastructure, particularly then the passive infrastructure, and with that I mean the fiber in the ground, which carries the signal, the towers on the ground and on the rooftops, which carry the radio signals. These things are passive infrastructure. We have seen from day one that we don't think that's a strategic asset over time to have for anyone. It more so is a waste of resources if we have to build 4 towers instead of 1 tower in one place. It's a waste of energy to have 4 diesel generators running on 4 towers instead of having 1 serving 4. And that's the principle that we still are pushing. And we were initially promised by the government that the access to MPTs, in particularly then, fiber and towers, should be shared for that purpose. And I have to report, unfortunately, this year as well as we did last year, that so far I don't have any fiber or any tower that I may have been able to share from MPT. On the contrary, on our side, we have always been open for sharing and encourage that, and we now have 7,400 sites in operation. Out of that, I think approximately 2,400 is now on a shared basis. And everyone can go to our towerco companies and be a second tenant or a third tenant on our towers. We are not restricting anyone to use any of our towers. And the same goes with fiber, where we have been able to have some fiber we build ourselves, but then we swap capacity with Ooredoo. But those are on a small scale. The biggest scales are yet to be seen in this area. And then the last point is that or the two last points, I want to mention that we have been eagerly waiting that the regulator becomes independent. And this was set out in a roadmap to be happening in 2015. We're now standing in 2017, and it's not happening. We know the plans are still valid for the government to do it. We are simply here again also giving our humble sort of push and say we encourage that it happens as soon as possible. Specifically now in the situation where we are now 4 operators in the market, with the new Mytel coming on board as the 4th operator now since January, which means you have 2 companies which has an ownership structure that ties back to the government. And the government has then the direct link then to the regulator. So it's as simple as that, yet as complicated to actually get this process on track to make sure that there's full independency on the regulator. My last point is, we have said before, we encourage that we get support for enforcing the rule of law. What do I mean by that? Well, some places where we build together with our towerco partners, we're facing difficulties. Difficulties in the sense that we might have everything legally done right, meaning the build permit is right, the approvals done by the neighbors are right, the construction is done correctly, everything is running, but then community issues arise, and then towers has to be shut down. In Kaya, as an example, I have 20% of my towers shut down. Shut down because there are community issues, which usually evolves around 3 topics. One is the radiation topic, where there is a perception that radiation from towers are bad for the local communities living there. This is, of course, proven by World Health Organization and also now recently acknowledged, and the stamp of approval is given by all the ministers at the union level, so Minister of Education, Minister of Communication, Minister of Transportation as well. And awareness has been brought out in massive order in terms of educating people on this. But still, it's a challenge. That's number one. Second is that there's also complaints which is being raised in terms of diesel generators and their noise level. And I'll come back to it afterwards when I talk about how we're dealing with that, which in some cases has then in a very quiet sort of village or society, suddenly you will have something which is humming in the background and making noise. That's a new situation for the local living there. And then thirdly, I would say it is this envy, which are sometimes created in small societies. Somebody is getting a rent out of sacrificing their piece of land for the towers, and that rent is a steady and good income, and seemingly that can sometimes lead to confusions or debates, I would say, of an envy in a small local society of who should actually have it. And therefore, for us, it's so important that we're able to go back to, we will do our duty in terms of solving issues related to noise. We will do our duties in terms of informing on the radiation and proving that to everyone. But at the end of the day, we need support also for the law and order. If things are okay, that's the only way for us to help these states also bring the goods of what we can provide through communication out in these areas. Those were the areas of risk and uncertainty I wanted to share with you on what we were doing. The 2 next topics are the ones which are more into programs of improving, and which I think play a key role in the future of shaping any company who wants to have or be seen as running a sustainable business. One of the biggest issues we face across Myanmar is the lack of grid connectivity. We are an energy consuming business. All our towers, which we erect and which we run, and make sure that your network, your phones can be used 24/7, wherever you go, has to be supported by the towers and the underlying network. And this underlying network needs energy. And if you just look at those two simple facts I have on the board, 18% of the rural villages have grid connect. At the same time, we are running with an ambition together with the government that we want to cover 95% of the population living in Myanmar with our services. It almost seems impossible when you look at it from this perspective. How can you, if you need power, do it? And the solution lies in that we have to use different models of deployment. We need to use diesel generators in combination with batteries. And now I will talk to you also how we use new technology in terms of solar panel and then windmills as well also to actually make sure that we can have alternative ways of getting enough energy to the sites. But just bear in mind that one single site that you see when you're driving around, especially in the rural area, which is not connected to grid, uses 700 liters of diesel per month. 700 liters. Which means in 2016, we used 35 million liters of diesel. That's not sustainable over time. In the beginning, where sort of we're lacking the infrastructure, this is then the means to an end to make do with actually rolling out. But we don't want this to be the future. And there is no short fix or quick fix on this that can just take this away. We need, of course, to work with government and their program of electrifying Myanmar, bringing out grid and electricity, which is a huge effort that they're betting on and getting collaboration on in their own right. We have to leverage that to all extent possible when this is then coming. In the meantime, we have to look for our own innovation as well. And I want to share with you a couple of innovations we're doing. One is that, and the most powerful one is back to, can we invest to get sites on the grid? So in my contracts with the tower companies, we have special clauses and special incentives programs developed that if we are able to connect, we will cover extra cost together with them to make sure that we can actually get a grid connected site, because it means so much for the environment in terms of reducing the use of diesel. So we go to the extent that we even build electric network where the last mile where it might be missing. So we build with transistors and grids that we hang up towards reaching the towers, but they come at an expense which we are then